All right, let's begin. Hi, everyone. I'm Karthik Hariharan. I'm a counseling psychologist, a TEDx speaker, and a counselor with DPS International in Gurgaon. And today we are here, and I'm very excited to start the session today in partnership with TVS to talk about violence against women. All right, so let's get right into it. So, this is a conversation about men being wicked enough to stand up for what's right and how all of us can be raider combatants. In this fight in this fight for violence against women, we often see that yes, that women are in the forefront, but it's about time that all of us be in this fight together. It's a high time that all of us be feminists and fight for equality, fight for equity, and put an end to this violence that women face every day of their lives. One might wonder, why are we having this session? Why are we having this conversation? We're having this conversation because, as you saw in the video, crimes against women have significantly gone up in the pandemic, and it is high time that we have platforms like these where we talk about this. We need to have a platform where we are bringing the conversation out of the household, out of the classroom, into a public space so that we can shine more light on this, so that we can have more awareness on this, and that we all of us can collectively come to solutions around this. The more we talk about this, the more awareness we build, the more solutions we build, right? So it's high time that we get together and we have a conversation about being wicked enough to stand up for what's right. The TVS brand has taken an initiative to educate the youth and implement a real change in the system. It's not enough that we simply, watch TV, watch the news, or participate in a petition. We need to talk about it. We need to generate some real activity around this, right? And that's why TVS Radar stands against the violence that women face at every step of their lives. Going ahead in this presentation, you'll see that women don't face violence as isolated incidents. It occurs across their lifespan, especially in our country, and it's not okay. So, what constitutes of violence against women? In the last decade, honestly, we've seen an extreme number of cases of acid attacks, dowry deaths, child abuse, honor killing, trafficking, and domestic violence. These are just some to name a few. If you have other examples of what are the kinds of violence that women face, feel free to put those down in the chat box for everyone else to understand that this also exists in our country and around the world. And this is just some to name a few. And these are some prominent forms of violence that women face. Now, let's look at what are the phases of a woman's life in which they face this kind of violence. So, this is the kind of violence a woman may face throughout her life. It starts off at feticide and infanticide. In so many households, even now, being born a daughter is met with so much discrimination. When a son is born, there's this sort of a excitement and celebration. But when a daughter is born, in so many households, even now, whether they're rural or urban, across the states, there is this sort of a lull where they are not happy that a daughter is born. In case your household was not one of them, congratulations. You are in a statistic where women are appreciated, where women are celebrated. Looking at a huge majority of the statistics in our country, we are still facing feticide and infanticide as a crime. Where there is an economic or a cultural preference for sons, and the pregnancy diagnostic tool is misused to cause female feticide. Further going ahead, at a school going age, even now, many girls are not given access to primary and secondary education. Even now, many girls have to drop out of school for economic reasons, for helping out around the house. Even now, girls who are on the way to school are eve teased or harassed. And it is unfortunate that this still happens. And what is even more unfortunate is that within our own circle of friends, family, we will find enough and more cases where women have faced this, and it is not okay. Um, Going forward, when you look at adolescence, many adolescent girls become victims of sexual abuse, both on internet and otherwise, exploitation, violence, acid attacks, early marriage, or even HIV/AIDS. The list, I mean, sexual violence, the list is endless. Adolescents of all the ages, I mean, really, a child who is growing up, who is coming into the world as a human being, is met with so much trauma that it becomes hard for the child to cope with life. It further leads to mental health troubles and sexual and reproductive troubles for a child growing up and becoming a matured woman. Then we see marriage. In our country, marriage is an ongoing topic. It is a topic that is always met with some or the other form of conflict. Many women, either they are married early, or if they are married, there is some or the other issue related to dowry, because in some form of economic torture, or even if it's not dowry, there's some form of domestic violence at the hands of the husband or the in-laws. And if a woman is getting married late, there is always that societal judgment where they are met with some or the other form of discrimination. It's not okay. It's not okay. And you know, all of you are in university, and and I'm sure that these conversations around marriage, you already see them in your household and around your household. It's high time that we as individuals start standing up for women's rights and talk about these issues. Then comes motherhood. Over here, we see that often women are not provided with proper medical care for prenatal, neonatal, or postnatal needs when it comes to pregnancy, or even when it comes to raising children. They say that it takes a village to raise a child, but in most cases, we see women doing it on their own. And if I further link that to point number one of feticide or infanticide, the trauma of having to abort a child because she's giving birth to a girl child causes major damage physically and mentally. And we are so accustomed to looking at it as a statistic that we forget that there's a real person behind that. What can we do about it? What can we do about it as a society? We need to think about that. Lastly, of course, this is not the last, it's a non-exhaustive list, but last on this list, workplace. Many of you are going to graduate from college soon and are going to be at the workplace. And it is sad to see that often women suffer from exploitation, unequal pay for work, lack of promotion despite merit, and physical and economic and emotional abuse, or even workplace harassment. It's not okay. It's not okay. And it is tragic to see that women have to face this kind of discrimination at the workplace just by virtue of gender, just by virtue of who they are. It's terrible. And as young girls, I encourage you all to stand up for what is right at the workplace. And as young men, I stand up for, I encourage all of you also to stand up for that kind of equality at the workplace. This battle cannot be won alone. Moving forward, why do we need to talk about this? As I said, it's not enough that we talk about this in seclusion. It is not enough that we talk about this in our households or amongst friends. It is high time that we bring this conversation out into the public and talk more and more about this to kind of understand what are the kind of societal thought processes that our society still thinks, right? And how do we uncover these archaic or rigid thoughts, and how can we undo them? We can only undo them if we start encountering them, right? It is crucial to talk about this because of the statistical reality of human rights violation. And remember, as I said, behind every statistic, behind every data point is a real person who has suffered. And it's high time that we address it, right? 1 in 3 women struggle with sexual violence. That is an abysmal number. It's a pathetic number. If you don't know women around you who've struggled with sexual violence, chances are that they haven't opened up about it, or chances are that they don't feel comfortable opening about it to you as an individual. So if you are genuinely unaware of women around you who have struggled with sexual violence, think again. This number makes you think. 28.4% of pregnant women suffer domestic violence. Now, here I want to talk about the fact that domestic violence is not only physical, domestic violence is also mental and emotional. So, I would urge you all to now start looking at domestic violence from a new light. Start looking up the signs on how to understand if someone is facing domestic violence or not, because more often than not the victim might not speak up. So how do we ensure that we are educating ourselves to look for the signs of domestic violence? Only 25% of survivors sought help to end the violence. Why is this? Why is it that such a small number is seeking help to end violence? What is it that they don't trust? What is it? Where is it that they're facing barriers? Why is it a struggle for women to still seek help and end their cycle of violence? Why is it so hard? That is, again, I leave that to all of you to start doing your research. Talk to girls, talk to grown women who have faced this kind of violence, understand what is so wrong in our society such that women are feeling unsupported to speak up. And lastly, 33% never told anyone. You see, this 33% data is also from people um, who were able to record that kind of a data, who were able to say that we never told anyone, right? Beyond that 33% is an unknown and a much greater number of women who still won't tell anyone because they are struggling through the violence that they are facing. So, what can we do about it? How do we make a more comfortable environment for women to open up about the kind of violence that they are facing? Okay, now here I encourage your participation in the chat box. What can we as radar combatants do? Right? We need to follow a three-pronged approach to prevent, eradicate, and counsel. Now, I will get into the slides. I will tell you about prevention, eradication, and counseling. But first, I want to see your participation in terms of what you think counts as preventing, eradicating, and counseling, or even solutions that go beyond this, right? If someone wants to talk about certain problems that you think still need to be highlighted, use the chat box. If someone is thinking about solutions or just ideas or thoughts regarding this, feel free to start writing. As I said, this is a collaborative space where I need all of you to come together and brainstorm. Because this discussion is not only limited to this workshop, this discussion goes beyond. So go ahead, guys. Prevent, eradicate, and counsel. Any solutions that anyone can think of? Women have been told from a very long time to be accommodating. That has to change. Education about alternate options are best. High five, Megha. Absolutely. Why is it that women are always told to accommodate? Why? What does it even mean? And what are they accommodating to? Why must they be forced to change for an unchanging household? What does this even mean? And why must we as a society listen to this kind of nonsense? Why are women told since childhood, oh, you better change, you better adopt, you better adapt to the household where you will go to? What does this even mean? Really, this kind of suggestion, who is it making life easier for? Thank you, Megha, for that. Others, Feel free to put down quick points before I move on. 1 more minute, quickly. Megha, feel free to add. Come on, guys. Be mindful of what women share. Vanchika, I don't know what's the context with which you're saying this, but I'm going to take it in one of the contexts, that is when women share. I think people must listen actively, and I'm going to cover active listening also going ahead. Um, Active listening is, you know what, we'll cover it right now. Active listening is when you are listening to a woman's story with your entire being. Listening does not just happen with the ears. Listening happens with the eyes, with the face, with your presence and your presence of mind, to understand that when someone's sharing their story, especially a woman who has suffered at the hands of some or the other form of violence, you need to see beyond what they are just saying. You need to be physically and mentally present to understand that this goes deeper than what they are simply telling you. So active listening is the whole human presence, and it requires you to be mindful of what women share. The society thinks that women are more weaker than men. Yeah, I mean, I swear, Charles Darwin and his biological theory has led to all sorts of horrible interpretations of what society thinks of what weaker is supposed to mean. And this is just upsetting. And the fact that it's so ingrained in the minds of a lot of people, it's like constantly women are having to prove themselves that no, they are not weak, or yes, they are capable. Like in so many workplaces where people just assume that this is a man so he can do it, whereas a woman has to prove herself. It's appalling, it's sad, and it's our reality. And the more we talk about it, the more we can change it. It is enough giving an saying it is not okay. What do we have to do is reach out to those women and take out action. No more awareness, no more discussion or awareness about discrimination. Just wipe it out of the world and mind. No more the word meant for women. Absolutely. Absolutely. To Anisa. You know, it's actually sad that we still have to talk about it, because not enough people have the kind of awareness required to act. But yes, we need to take immense amount of action. And what do those action steps mean? We'll go into it further. Okay. Thank you guys for these amazing points. The quality of these points has been phenomenal. Others who wish to add, please do continue to add. Okay. So now let's get into it. Let's get into prevent, eradicate, and counsel. All right. So how can we prevent gender-based violence? Okay. First is, truth be told, violence affects women's lifestyles. It affects their health, physical, mental, reproductive health. It affects them all over. It also affects their families. It also affects their support system. Violence goes far deeper than just the surface. It affects a lot of people. So first is education, right? Education is like what all of you are doing. This is the first step, right? Being participative, being in a space where you're listening. We need to educate ourselves about gender-based violence. We need to understand that it does not have a specific shape or form. The more we educate ourselves about it, the more aware we become of the signs around us in case someone around us is experiencing that kind of violence. Without that kind of right education, we are not going to do anything about it, right? Second, informing. Once you are educated, take it upon you to inform others, right? Information happens across the ages, right? Whether it's sex education for young children, whether it is general discriminatory education, or at the workplace, HR policy sensitization at the workplace, to informing households about the laws that exist and the kind of support systems that exist for women who genuinely need help. Third, understanding consent. To put it simply, one of the simplest understandings of consent is that no means no, and no is a full statement, full stop. It does not require any justification. If ever two adults are, embarking on any sort of activity together, and if a woman says no at any point of time, there is no further action that the male or the other partner has to engage in, right? Consent needs to be understood at every level, and consent needs to be given explicitly. One cannot simply think that, oh, this person has consented. No, ask for consent, seek consent, right? um, and it is unfortunate that our mainstream media, our movies, they promote this kind of a, an environment of where consent is not necessary, or keep pursuing the girl, she'll eventually be yours. This kind of, these stupid movies have really, they've kind of, they have actually influenced our culture in rural areas where people do not understand consent, and that really needs to be looked into, that where you converse with people and tell them around you what consent means. Lastly, demanding data. You see, what does demanding data mean? Demanding data means that you need to ask people around you, people in your university, people in the local government, for data on violence against women. It is only when we start asking for this data do local governments, local universities, publications, whichever organization which is in a space of power, will start funding these kind of researches. They will start looking for this kind of data. Already data is available readily in government spaces, but demanding data is also a habit. If we can take 10 minutes out of our day, 10 minutes away from Instagram, scrolling Facebook, to just look for data on these relevant issues, then we are also inculcating that habit where we are influencing our friend circle to also demand for data, right? So these are some of the basic ways in which we can educate ourselves to prevent gender-based violence. Okay. Next, is there a way to eradicate this violence? As I said, and I've said this, I think, a bunch of times now, please learn the signs of abuse. Abuse is not always loud and out there. It could be, within your own friend circle, your friends who are probably dating. You might not even notice if there is some sort of a toxic pattern in a relationship where there is gaslighting, or there is some sort of a power oriented abuse that's happening. And frankly, you will never know unless you learn the signs. So it's high time that we as young individuals educate ourselves and learn the signs of abuse. Next, stand against rape culture. It is unfortunate that we have a rape culture in this country. Many might think that no, this is a farce or this doesn't exist, but the data shows otherwise. We need to start talking about it. We need to, if ever, you see people uh, talking about women in a derogatory manner, you need to stand up against it. You need to ask people, ask for clarification, make them rectify what they are saying, make them think about the words that are coming out of their mouth. You need to stand up actively. You need to do something about it, because it is these unchecked words that eventually start becoming unchecked actions, right? So it's not enough that you just check your friend circle, start by checking yourself, then check your friend circle. And if ever you see something, you witness something, stand up and be wicked enough to actually say something, right? See something, say something, as they say. Next, fund women's organizations. There are a lot of women organizations like Guria India, SOS India. There are many, many women's organizations that help support survivors, that help support victims of domestic abuse, that help these women get out of the cycle of abuse and violence and find their own space, find their voice, and find their healing. So if you are interested in doing something real about it, please go and help these organizations either through service or through charity, money, time, whatever it is that you can contribute. Go ahead and contribute to these organizations, learn something about them, learn something yourself, and see what can be done, right? And lastly, hold each other accountable. Many of us are going to go back after this session and be like, okay, that was a session. Maybe I learned something, maybe I didn't. Holding each other accountable is actually ensuring that your friends go ahead and learn the things that were taught today, or go and demand data, right? Or go and look for those signs of abuse, or go and check up on their women friends to say, hey, are you okay? Are you mentally and physically well? Is there anything that I can do to support you, right? Hold each other accountable, because without that, this movement and everything that we do is going to fall flat on its face. So we need to hold ourselves accountable and then hold each other accountable. How can we help the survivors? So women who have faced some form of violence, who are surviving through the trauma, who are trying to re-establish themselves and rebuild themselves and just find peace and solace, right? The first thing is, if they have gone through this certain kind of trauma, you need to provide a safe space, right? Providing a safe space is giving them a private space, making them feel supported, making them feel not judged, and giving them that kind of a presence that ensures that they are comfortable to talk about what's happened, and just find that space for them to heal, right? Next is active listening. As I said, active listening involves listening beyond the ears. It's listening with the whole body. It's listening with the eyes, with the facial expression, with your mind, to ensure that you are physically and mentally present to completely take in their story and give them the empathy, right? Give them the empathy to understand that this is their reality and that is the best they could have done in that situation, right? Next, we have professional counseling. Now, as much as we have friends and family who support, as much as we have friends and family who are out there helping, the survivor, more often than not, a friend or a family member will not be in a position to cause that kind of healing that can bring them back to normalcy, right? What does normalcy mean in this case? Normalcy means that when a person has gone through some form of trauma, normalcy is that person's state of mind before the trauma happened, right? Their emotional, mental, and physical state before they were impacted by the trauma, right? So normalcy is bringing them out of what transpired and back to a state of wholesomeness, rebuilding their sense of self, their sense of courage. That is what normalcy looks like. And more often than not, you need a mental health expert to establish that for women, or for anyone for that matter. But in this case, women. How can we correctly utilize legal resources? Okay, now over here, I encourage you all, take a screenshot, or use the snipping tool, whatever, or note these down, right? If you know any woman who's facing any kind of violence, you can take the following legal steps, right? There's the women helpline, there's the women helpline for domestic abuse, and of course, there's the police, right? Now, It is very easy to note that this is the helpline, but in case the helpline is not helpful, then further, what do we do? Right? What do we do if the helpline is inaccessible or there is some form of barrier in accessing that help, right? Then you can contact NGOs like Guria India or Action Aid India, see what the NGO can do for you, see if they can send a social worker, what kind of assistance can they provide, right? Further, you can join the Shiro's community to seek free legal counsel to support and empower women. This free legal counsel is extremely important, right? Legal counsel is when, let's say that you're trying to file an FIR and you are struggling because maybe the attitude of the officer, unfortunately this also happens where the if the attitude of the police officer is not supportive, or in any case is making the survivor feel more insecure, then the legal counsel is a great tool to kind of help you navigate that and ensure that you are on the path of seeking that justice, right? More often than not, women are often even scared to take any sort of corrective action. So then again, the legal counsel comes into effect to help you with the laws and the responsibility of all the people involved in the system who can help you not only with justice but also with support and remunerative aid to help you get back on your feet. So what are some of the important laws that protect women, right? In our country, the constitution has enough laws and provisions that help people who are seeking justice when it comes to discrimination or violence, or gender-based discrimination and violence, right? So some of the important provisions are written over here. Again, I invite you all to take a screenshot, look these up. What does it mean and why must we educate ourselves with the law? It is because in our country, we have an affirmative bias towards women when it comes to gender-based violence. More often than not, if a woman is pressing charges against a person for some or the other form of gender-based violence, we have an affirmative bias that helps women get that kind of justice, right? Now, many people often come in and question the role of affirmative bias in terms of men's rights. But at points like these, I often encourage people that men's rights should be brought up not when a woman's forum is being discussed, but in their own time and space in their own forum, right? And if such a thing is needed, then they need to ask for that, right? As of now, data shows that most of the victims of gender-based violence tends to be women, majority in our country, unfortunately. And that is why we have sessions like these, so that we can educate everyone and get the kind of right legal advice and help needed, as one of the person in the chat box mentioned, the right kind of action needed to actually do something about this, right? Moving further, I hope you guys have taken a screenshot for whoever needs it. Right. So now we are going to go into question answer round. We'll take about 5 to 10 minutes to either discuss something or take on some questions, after which we're going to have a small post survey and a pledge. So if someone has questions or someone wants to share an insight with everyone, please use the chat window and share your thoughts. I see that Vanchika has written, I feel that this concept of consent has time and again been ruined by mainstream media. Yeah, unfortunately, that is very true. Um, and frankly, as young adults, what can we do to hold mainstream media accountable for this kind of misrepresentation of consent? What can we do? Sudhir has written, it has to start in school. The real work is with school teachers who are not afraid to speak up. Yes, I'm a school teacher, and I'm really happy that you've written this. And take corrective action. Seed them young with values, late after school is over to correct. Absolutely. We have to start young. We have to catch them young. And that's what encourages the prevention of violence, right? Once school is done, once actually school has the power to even teach children the kind of values required for them to speak up in their own homes. More often than not, you know, the homes in which young girls are raised are not supportive, and it tends to take a hit on the child's self-esteem. So what can we do about that? Others, call out these media houses channel for the sexist remark they make or the content they create. Please start. Please be active on Twitter, Instagram. Do what it takes to do this. Um, get be a part of trending hashtags. Um, use the power of social media to do this. It's fascinating to see how when they were during Trump's campaign, one of the most powerful forces to interrupt. Now, again, this is morally gray, right? This can be seen as both right or wrong. But I'm just using this as an example to show you the power of social media. During Trump's campaign, one of the most powerful groups to kind of infiltrate his rallies and decrease the number of people attending his rallies was the K-pop group, right? I don't know if you know about K-pop and Korean music, but there is a huge fan following for it across the world, and these K-pop fans were able to kind of use their collective power to call out Trump for all the racist things that he was saying and doing. So we as a young generation have that kind of power in social media to actually affect the kind of change that we want to see, real change, real action. Others, let's take 2 more minutes. If others are writing, what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump to the pledge, and then maybe if we have time, we'll come back to the rest of the questions. All right. So now, before we end the session, let's all just take a pledge to stand up for what's right and together be the generation that can implement change in a system that still allows acts of violence against women. And frankly, let's just take that pledge together. And if you notice in the chat window, there is a small link to that pledge. Please, please, please visit this link and share this link with your friends, and just see what that pledge entails, right? Like just it's not it's not yes, it can be hard to stand up for what's right, but if you take a pledge to start doing that now, then you know that you are committed to that action, right? So let's take that pledge, guys. And I think we have another point over here. Teach our sons from an early age to be respectful towards the opposite gender. Absolutely, George. Thank you for saying that. Um, that's why we need more men to be wicked and to stand up for what's right. So if you have younger brothers at home who need to be taught this, who need to be taught about the state of what's happening in our country, and how they as young children need to stand up for what's right, now is a good time, right? I'm just going to take one last question. How can we ensure that safety is reached to all? Many people, including middle and old age, are also in this. When will society be good enough for men to walk around anytime they want? It is it is such a critical question what you have put down. It is sad that our women of any age group cannot walk safely at night. What can we do, right? Um, Whoever's posted this question, I would actually encourage you to look at um, a lot of these groups, action oriented groups, especially on Instagram, and of course you can Google them. They they used to start doing, it's called, I think, reclaim the space, or is a hashtag also associated with this, where women's groups started reclaiming spaces that were seen as uncomfortable, right? Either by going on a group night walk together, by encouraging the government to put up street lights and CCTV cameras there, by having nighttime musicals in those areas to get more of a crowd happening over there, to kind of reclaim spaces that are otherwise considered unsafe by taking a collective communal action. I mean, this is the one thing that I could think of from the top of my mind. So I would actually suggest you guys to start doing that as young adults, and start building communal safety. So just wanted to share that, right? Uh, all right. On that note, we come to the last bit, which is the post survey, after which I will relieve you all because you have a lovely evening ahead of you. Thank you for coming to this talk. I wish you all the best. I wish that all of us can be wicked enough to stand up for what's right, and I can't wait to see all the wonderful things that you do in this space. Thank you all for being a part of this. All right, thank you. Bye.